Welcome to the weekend edition of the Fast Five by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and hello, Sean Aylmer.
Hello, Michael.
Sean, on weekdays, of course, it's all about the Fast Five, which is the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. On the weekend, we still keep it to 5 minutes, but we're going to pick out the biggest story of the week, the sleeper story, the one that's maybe not getting the attention that it should, the most remarkable story, and then our favourite story. Let's jump into it. What was the biggest story of the week for you?
Plenty around, but I'm picking the economy. The national accounts came out, showed that the economy expanded by 0.8% during the March quarter, takes the annual clip to about 3.3%. Households are spending, businesses are investing, governments are flashing the cash at the moment. Net exports detracted, that's not such a bad thing. Within the national accounts, it showed that inflation is rising, wages are rising. What does it all mean? Higher interest rates from next week.
All right, that is a very, very, very big story. I'm actually cheating a little bit. I'm grouping a bunch of stories under the heading of energy. First up is AGL Energy. This week, the board dumped its plan to split the company in two, one housing carbon-intensive power plants, the other kind of retailing the energy. A lot of people campaigned against it. Billionaire investor Mike Cannon-Brookes, super fund Hester. The plan's now been axed, and the chair and CEO and a couple of directors are gone too. The energy crisis is another part of the broad energy story. We're in the middle of one. There's a cold snap down the East Coast. Gas prices are soaring. Power retailers are warning of a doubling in power bills. The focus is really shifting from cutting emissions to just keeping the lights on. We've got crisis meetings on next week. Really, there's so much happening in the energy space at the moment that, put it all together, it's the biggest story of the week.
Good call.
All right, let's move on to most remarkable. I'll start this one. It was an easy one for me today. Tesla boss Elon Musk declared that working remotely is over. He did it via 2 emails, first to his executive team that was titled, "Remote work is no longer acceptable." Then he sent one to the rest of the Tesla staff saying, just to be super clear, he wants everyone in the office a minimum 40 hours a week alongside everyone else, not in some kind of remote pseudo office, he called it. And he said that if you don't show up, we will assume that you have resigned. He's been so vocal about this. He reckons American people are trying to avoid going to work. He's compared them to the workers in his Chinese factories who won't even leave the factory and will often kind of sleep there. He's demonstrated that himself, that he'll work 120 hours a week and just sleep at the office or at the factory. Not really a popular move with staff and probably goes against the trend of greater flexibility in a hybrid work environment. What do you think?
Yeah, possibly. Look, my most remarkable story is about what people are claiming on their tax deductions. It came out this week from the Chartered Accountants Australia that people are claiming pet dogs, Disneyland trips, high-heel shoes. They're claiming cosmetic surgery, post-COVID family reunion flights, even football club memberships as stress relief. Hardly work deductions. Remarkable, really.
It really is. The sleeper story this week, Sean, what was it for you that's trying to fly under the radar a little bit?
Oh, look, there's plenty going on in fringe financial markets. Now, they're not that fringe. I'm talking about cryptos and buy now, pay later. The big 4 banks in Australia dominate financial markets. What they say goes. This week, Commonwealth Bank came out, just said it was getting cold feet around buy now, pay later. It still wants to allow people to trade cryptocurrencies on its app. But the sell-off in digital currencies was causing a problem. A lot of the air had gone out of the crypto sector, and the bank just wants to make sure its customer knows what they're getting into. Just not really a strong endorsement of cryptos. And then ANZ retail banking head Miley Carnegie came out. She said her bank hadn't jumped into buy now, pay later. Pretty happy that they haven't done so. Just interesting that the big 4 banks are just starting to get nervous about some of the non-mainstream financial products. That's why it's my sleeper story.
All right, well, mine this week is there's so much talk all the time about property prices, Sean, that with so much noise, the rental market can kind of get a little overlooked. This week, we really heard about how we are essentially moving towards a rental crisis. Vacancy rates fell to their lowest level on record across the capital cities. They were led by Melbourne, where availability dropped by 8%. This is just a couple of years after rents fell during the pandemic. It is a big concern because house prices are unaffordable for so many. There are now fewer rental options and rent rises just around the corner. It does have the makings of a real kind of housing crisis.
Sure does.
All right, last one, favourite story of the week. I'll kick us off. This was just a personal favourite. Because it's the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, a ripper story about the value of Buckingham Palace. If the palace is put on the market, it would apparently sell for £1.3 billion, around $2.3 billion. The full royal property portfolio, all the estates and castles and manors and whatnot, has been valued at about £3.7 billion or $6.5 billion, which is just incredible. My favourite part of the whole thing thing, though, it has a secret swimming pool. I thought that was pretty neat.
That is pretty neat. Look, my favourite story of the week was the swearing in of the new Labor government. I like this parliament, not because it's a centre-left government, forget that, but just because we're slowly starting to see a parliament that better represents Australia. We still have a long way to go, but this parliament has a record number of women and a relatively diverse team in terms of ethnicity. The cabinet has 10 women out of 23 positions. There are 38% of representatives in the House of Representatives are women. That's a long way in front of any other parliament. Penny Wong as Foreign Minister just looks and feels right. Claire O'Neill's been promoted to Cabinet to take on Home Affairs. Linda Burney became the first Indigenous woman to hold the Indigenous Australians portfolio. Katie Gallagher, Tanya Plibersek, all big-name, very capable politicians. My favourite story because it just makes Parliament look a little bit more like the rest of Australia. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, well said. All right, there we go. 5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll be back on Monday morning with the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and this is the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed.